The phantom of the freight yard, the rattle of spray paint cans in my backpack was a familiar comfort as I made my way through the darkened train yard. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rusted hulks of abandoned freight cars. I was in my element here, surrounded by the perfect canvas for my art. My friend Lucas trailed behind me, a cloud of sweet-smelling smoke billowing from the joint dangling from his lips. He wasn't much of an artist himself, but he enjoyed tagging along on my nocturnal adventures. "You sure this is safe, man?" Lucas asked, his eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. I laughed, the sound echoing strangely in the empty yard. "Relax, bro. We've got the place to ourselves." Little did I know how wrong I was. We found a pristine stretch of freight cars, their metal sides gleaming dully in the moonlight. It was a graffiti artist's dream, acres of untouched space just begging to be painted. I couldn't believe my luck. "Check it out," I whispered to Lucas, running my hand reverently over the smooth surface. Not a single tag. "We've hit the jackpot." I tossed Lucas a can and set to work, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of creation. The hiss of the paint, the sharp chemical smell, the gradual emergence of my vision on the metal canvas, it was intoxicating. Time seemed to stand still as I worked, my tags growing more elaborate with each passing minute. I was in the zone, oblivious to anything but the art flowing from my fingertips. It wasn't until I paused to admire my handiwork that I noticed something was off. The yard had gone unnaturally quiet. Even the distant hum of the city seemed muffled, as if something was pressing down on us, muting all sound. "Lucas?" I called out, my voice sounding strangely flat in the stillness. "You there, man?" No response. A chill ran down my spine as I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard Lucas moving around. How long had I been working in silence? I fumbled for my phone, using its weak light to scan the area. Lucas was nowhere to be seen. "This isn't funny, dude," I muttered, trying to keep the fear from my voice. "Come on out." That's when I heard it, a muffled clang from somewhere in the darkness, followed by the scrape of metal on metal. My heart leapt into my throat as I swung my phone around, desperately trying to locate the source of the sound. The beam of light fell on one of the freight cars I had just tagged, its door now standing slightly ajar. I could have sworn it had been sealed shut when I started painting. "Lucas?" I called again, my voice trembling. "That you?" Another clang, louder this time, echoed through the yard. It was coming from inside the car. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But I couldn't leave without knowing what had happened to Lucas. Gathering what little courage I had left, I approached the open door. The stench hit me first, a nauseating mix of chemicals and decay that made my eyes water. As I peered into the darkness, my phone's light fell on something that made my blood run cold. A chair sat in the center of the empty car, ropes and chains scattered around it like some kind of demented altar. And there, scrawled on the wall in what looked horribly like dried blood, were the words, "Fresh paint." I stumbled backwards, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of sick joke, but then I saw the figure emerging from the shadows at the far end of the car. Tall and gaunt, with eyes that gleamed with madness in the dim light. In one hand, it clutched a can of spray paint. In the other, a wicked-looking blade. "Fresh paint," it hissed, its voice a raspy whisper that sent shivers down my spine. Fresh blood. Fresh meat. I ran. Faster than I've ever run in my life, heart pounding, lungs burning. I could hear it behind me, its footsteps echoing on the metal tracks, its rasping breath getting closer with each passing second. I don't know how I made it to my car. I don't remember the drive home. All I know is that I never saw Lucas again. In the days that followed, as the police searched the train yard and questioned me endlessly, I tried to convince myself it had all been some kind of hallucination. A bad trip brought on by the fumes and the weed, but deep down, I knew the truth. Something evil lurked in that train yard, something that had been waiting for fresh prey. And I had delivered it right to its lair. I've given up graffiti now. I can't bear the sight of spray paint, the smell of it enough to bring me to my knees, gasping and retching as the memories flood back. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear the rattle of spray cans outside my window. And I wonder, is it coming back to finish what it started? To claim the fresh meat that got away? The tunnel's embrace, the familiar rush of adrenaline coursed through my veins as I jogged alongside the slow-moving freight train. The rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks, the vibration of the massive metal beast, it all brought back memories of wilder days, of adventures long past. I had come back to my hometown for a brief visit, desperate to escape the monotony of my new, responsible life. And here I was, about to relive one of my favorite teenage thrills, train hopping. The tunnel loomed ahead, a yawning mouth of darkness carved into the hillside. I knew from experience that once through, there would be a small clearing where I could safely disembark and make my way back to my car. One last ride for old time's sake. As I reached for the ladder, a strange flash of light from inside the tunnel caught my eye. It was gone in an instant, leaving me to wonder if I had imagined it. But there was no time to dwell on it. The train was picking up speed, and it was now or never. I swung myself up onto the ladder with practiced ease, grinning at the familiar rush. The entrance to the tunnel swallowed us, plunging me into near total darkness. I closed my eyes, savoring the wind on my face, the rumble of the train beneath me. That's when I felt it, a hand, cold and clammy, wrapping around my ankle. My eyes flew open, heart leaping into my throat. But there was nothing to see. Just impenetrable blackness all around. I must have imagined it, I told myself. A trick of the mind, brought on by the darkness and the nostalgia, but then it happened again. Another hand, this one grasping at my calf, trying to pull me down. I screamed, the sound swallowed by the roar of the train and the echoing confines of the tunnel. I kicked out blindly, my foot connecting with something solid. There was a grunt of pain, and the hands released me. Panic gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. I scrambled up the ladder, desperate to get as high as possible, away from whatever was reaching for me from the darkness. The train burst out of the tunnel, and I flung myself off without thinking, hitting the ground hard and rolling. Pain shot through my body, but fear kept me moving. I staggered to my feet, watching as the train rumbled away across the bridge. For a long moment, I stood there, gasping for breath, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Had there really been someone, or something, in that tunnel? Or had my mind been playing tricks on me? As my racing heart began to slow, a chilling realization dawned. The only way back to my car was through that same tunnel. I paced back and forth in the small clearing, weighing my options. I could try to cross the bridge, but that was a death wish, too long, too exposed. I could call for help, but how would I explain what I was doing out here? No, there was only one way out. I had to go back through the tunnel. I armed myself with a rock, more for the illusion of safety than any real protection. With each step into the oppressive darkness, my nerves stretched tighter. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing and the crunch of gravel under my feet. I was maybe halfway through when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic clicking. Like someone repeatedly snapping their fingers. It echoed off the curved walls, making it impossible to pinpoint its source. I froze, every muscle in my body tensed for flight. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice embarrassingly shaky. The clicking stopped abruptly. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from somewhere in the darkness ahead, came a sound that turned my blood to ice, a low, guttural growl, more animal than human. Panic overwhelmed me. I turned and ran, no longer caring about stealth or bravery. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out. Not daring to look back, I burst out of the tunnel, gasping and sobbing. But as I turned to look back, a flash of movement caught my eye. There, silhouetted against the faint light at the tunnel's entrance, stood two figures. They were unnaturally tall and thin, their limbs too long, their movements jerky and wrong. As I watched, frozen in horror, one of them opened its mouth impossibly wide and let out a screech that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. It was a sound of hunger, of rage, of inhuman malice. I ran. I ran until I reached my car. Until I was miles away from that cursed tunnel. But even now, years later, I can't shake the feeling that I didn't really escape. That whatever was in that tunnel is still out there, waiting. Watching. Hungry for the prey that got away. Sometimes, when I'm driving at night and pass through a tunnel, I swear I can hear that clicking again, growing louder as the darkness closes in around me. And I wonder, will this be the time they finally catch up to me? The whispers in the dark, the fluorescent lights of the high street subway station buzzed weakly overhead, casting a sickly glow over the empty platform. It was well past midnight, and I was alone, save for the occasional rumble of a distant train and the ever-present hum of the city above. 7 years as an MTA worker had hardened me to the eerie quiet of the subway system after hours. I'd seen my fair share of strange things in the tunnels beneath New York, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to experience. I was in the middle of my nightly maintenance routine when I heard it, a sharp, metallic clang echoing from somewhere down the tracks. I froze, mop in hand, straining my ears. In the oppressive silence of the empty station, the sound had been as startling as a gunshot, probably just some debris falling. I muttered to myself, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over me. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. In all my years working these tunnels, I'd never heard anything quite like that. I tried to return to my work, but barely 10 minutes had passed when the sound came again. Louder this time, unmistakable. It was as if someone, or something, was striking the rails with tremendous force. My hands shook as I set down my mop and approached the edge of the platform. The darkness of the tunnel seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, daring me to peer into its depths. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding small and frightened in the vast, empty space. "Is anyone there?" For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, just as I was about to turn away, I heard it, a child's voice, high and plaintive, echoing from deep within the tunnel. "Help me," it called. "Please, help me." Every instinct screamed at me to run, to call for backup, to do anything but venture into that darkness alone. But the thought of a child in danger, trapped and afraid in the labyrinth of tunnels, overrode my fear. With trembling hands, I switched on my flashlight and made my way down onto the tracks. The beam of light seemed pitifully weak against the oppressive darkness that pressed in from all sides. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice echoing strangely off the curved walls. "Can you hear me?" "Yes," came the reply, "closer now. I'm right in front of you. Just keep walking." Something about the voice sent a chill down my spine. It was too calm, too measured for a child in distress. But I pressed on, the beam of my flashlight darting nervously from side to side. That's when I saw them, 2 figures, barely visible in the gloom ahead. One small, child-sized. The other much larger, looming over its smaller companion. My blood ran cold as I realized the trap I had walked into. This was no lost child, but something far more sinister. I turned to run, but my foot caught on a rail, sending me sprawling. My flashlight clattered away, plunging me into total darkness. And in that darkness, I heard it, the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, approaching from behind. "Where are you going?" the child's voice asked, no longer plaintive but filled with a terrible glee. "Don't you want to play with us?" I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, and ran blindly back the way I had come. I could hear them behind me, their footsteps echoing off the walls, growing closer with each passing second. I don't know how I made it back to the platform. I don't remember climbing up, or calling the police, or the long hours of questioning that followed. All I know is that when the officers searched the tunnels, they found nothing, save for a single child's shoe, lying abandoned on the tracks. They told me it was probably just some homeless people playing a cruel prank. That the stress of working nights had gotten to me, made me imagine things that weren't there, but I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And I know that something evil lurks in the tunnels beneath New York, something that wears the face of innocence to lure in its prey. I quit my job with the MTA the next day. I couldn't bear the thought of going back down into those tunnels, of facing that darkness again. But even now, years later, I still wake in the night, drenched in sweat, convinced I can hear a child's voice calling out to me from the shadows, and I wonder, how many others have heard that call? How many have followed it into the darkness, never to return? And when will it come for me again, to finish what it started on that terrible night in the tunnels beneath the city?